kids reminded me of what it's like to, when I was a kid on a warm summer night out playing. Nothing like summer. No school. So, good evening and welcome to you online as well. So we have been working our way through fundamentals of Tibetan Buddhism. Wonderful, wonderful text. And we are on taking refuge. So we've covered the Four Noble Truths, Wheel of Life, karma, and now the idea of taking refuge. And this is something that when someone thinks of themselves as, what is a Buddhist? A Buddhist is someone who's taken refuge. And we have this little prayer that we frequently do in the Tibetan tradition. Before we do any practice, we, as I mentioned even in our meditation, we establish our refuge, we cultivate bodhicitta. So we have a prayer. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddhas, the Dharma, the Sangha. To the positive potentials I create by practicing generosity and the other far-reaching attitudes. May I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. So the first aspect is this idea of refuge, of what do we rely upon? What makes something safe? A good unpacking of refuge is safe direction. Safe direction. What's a safe direction for me to go in? What's a path that I can rely upon? What is something that I can actually depend upon in the messiness of life? And so here's where we seek a refuge. We seek a place that is safe and dependable. So establishing such a refuge does not come because it's in a book. It doesn't come because the Dalai Lama said so. And it doesn't come because, our friends are Buddhist. Or really, to establish a refuge, there has to be an established sense of faith, but not faith in a sense of a blind faith. Within Buddhism, faith does not have a central theme. There's no central theme of have faith. It's more of a tool. It's not a destination. It's something that's utilized in a way that is thinking about, I like to think of it in terms of expectations. Expectations get a bad rap in our world, right? You always hear that thing, my serenity is in direct proportion to my expectations, right? One of my favorites is expectations are resentments waiting to happen. That there's this idea of having an expectation is always a problem. Which, if we look a little more deeply, having an expectation is essential in order to engage in life. If you didn't have an expectation of getting a college degree, you probably wouldn't go to college. If you didn't have an expectation of getting a paycheck, probably wouldn't go to work. If you didn't have an expectation that we'd be here tonight, you probably wouldn't have come. If you didn't have an expectation that there's just gas at the gas station, probably wouldn't go there to get gas. Expectations are not the problem. Unrealistic expectations are. And so this I like to relate to in the terms of faith. Do we have realistic faith, or do we have a faith that's just this obscure sort of idea of something that might be true maybe, which is similar to a lot of our expectations. And some are not grounded very well, and some are. So with faith, within the Buddhist idea of faith, is the idea that it is a faith built upon reason, logic, experience, and something that I can find reliable, dependable, and knowable, not unknowable. So as we think about refuge, what is it that says I can rely upon this path? It means I need to test it. I can't just, so-and-so said so. I need to be able to really lean into it, and it needs to be worthy of my efforts. I'm not going to put much effort into something if I don't have a lot of faith in it. And I'm not going to be able to sustain any type of effort in practice unless I feel that there's going to be some fruit at the end of that. You know, we'll stay up late at night and study for those exams to get that college degree because we have a great deal of faith that that'll get us a job, or it'll make us somewhere more employable. Likewise, you know, if we're going to build a house, we'll work hard for that. But if we don't have much faith, we're not going to make much change. And if we don't have a faith that's really reliable, there's really going to be very little opportunity to transform our lives. Very little. One of my teachers flatly says, Buddhism is a hobby, it's just kind of a waste of time. Pretty harsh, pretty harsh. And I don't think it's a waste of time, personally. I think that anything that we do that cultivates an opening of the heart, a little more ethical living, a little more opportunity to question things is going to be beneficial. It may drift away real quick, but I think there's a little seed that's planted there. But he's just talking in very clear terms that says, if you want to become enlightened, if you really want to be free of all mental sufferings and afflictions, well, meditating here and there once in a while, reading a book once in a while, coming to a Dharma talk here and there, not going to do it. That's what he really means. That's not going to happen. We can have an ease, a little less suffering. So if we're to make some real progress and real change and actually be liberated from mental and emotional afflictions, it's going to require some effort, and that effort's only going to be sustained with some very firm belief that it can happen. So when we look at taking refuge, number one is it doable? Is this something that works? Is it something that makes sense? Is it something that's worth my time and energy? Is it something I can engage in? And that's something you have to check out. It's not something to be taken on blind faith. So we started with, earlier in the view of Buddhism is, where does our mental and emotional suffering come from? And we identified this sort of misperception of the world we live in, and the karma that we create, the habits, the tendencies, the impulses, and the desires that we nurture. That actually, rather than creating inner peace and worthiness and value, actually take us off track and create more mental, emotional suffering, worries, fears, concerns, insecurities, anger, frustration, resentment, jealousy, etc. So I said, okay, well, is that true? Let's look at that. And the broad general view that we live in a world mostly that doesn't exist is something I think very easy to identify. It's not rocket science, it's not difficult. It's just that we rarely take time to acknowledge it. And so, there's physics, there's philosophers, but a very basic thing. The world that we live in, that we see out there, we just have a very strong tendency, a very pervasive, delusional mind that sees a world out there and says that's the way the world is. That person's a jerk, that person's cool, they're funny, they're interesting. And we put labels on things and we think that those labels are what those things are. Stepping back from that at any level, we can see that that doesn't hold up very well. Right? The world we experience is a subjective experience. I'm experiencing things differently than you do. Whether it's a meal, whether it's music, whether it's another person. That song that we both listen to You may enjoy, I may not like. I might enjoy, you may not like. On and on and on. Everything that we experience is a subjective experience that's seen only through our lens of experience. Outside, there's no object. And this is just straight physics, too. It's not, nothing esoteric here. And we all know that, right? We can have people in a room with us that we like and other people don't like. That's just, but we'll say they're likable. And then that's what they are. And they'll say, no, they're a jerk. And that's what they are to them. We look closer, there's no jerk in them and there's no likable in them. They're just human. And they do some things that I happen to like. And they do other things that other people don't like. But they just do those things, but I have a subjective experience of that. So if we kind of, just step back and realize, okay, the world that I live in, I rarely see it as a subjective experience. I really think that my view of the world is the way it is, and then I tell you about it. And I expect you to have the same world. And then there's the people that I like and don't like, and who do I like in the world? People who think the way I think. People have my values, so they're cool. And the people who don't have my values and see things differently, well, they're idiots, clearly. And I believe it to be true. And when we look a little further, we get to know someone we don't like, and we find out some of the struggles and hardships and things they've gone through in life. Now they're really likable. Now there's someone to admire. Right? The only difference is what I'm paying attention to. The only difference is the way I'm labeling it. And then I have a different experience. And so we also have this very delusional aspect of the world in again, pervasive. And for those of you that come teachings all the time, it's just again and again. We really have a strong belief system that I'll be happy if. Right house, right job, right car, right relationship, the next vacation, I'm going to be happy if. And if I get all that lined up, I'll be happy, and that's a good life. And it's a fascinating story. And it's strong, because we can know how untrue it is and then grab right onto it. And again, if we step back for a moment and we go, count up all of the incredible, wonderful, joyous, beautiful events you've had in your life, relationships you've had in your life, pleasurable experiences you've had in your life. Look at all of them. And where are they when you feel sad, insecure, and in despair? How much do they help you? And then somehow, if I can't be happy now, what is it that makes me think that if I just get that vacation, then I'll be happy? If I just get that job. So we can see how this mind of ours operates on a paradigm that just doesn't work very well. We spend a lot of our life focusing on exterior circumstances, believing them to be the source of our happiness and well-being. And it can never provide the lasting happiness that we seek, which is already within us. And even though, it's said a million times that it's an inside job, this is not where we spend our time. We'll spend a lot of time working to build a house. We'll stay up late and work really hard to get an extra paycheck or a vacation. But how much inner work do we do to find inner peace, well-being, and an opportunity to let go of mental afflictions of anger, resentment, jealousy, frustration, and see the world clearly? How much time do we put into that? So Buddhism, and we covered at the top, at the start of this text, the Tibetan word, it's like, it has a relationship to an insider, one who does inner work. It's seeking inside. It's recognizing that my mental and emotional suffering is just that, it's mental. Anger is in my mind. Anger is not out there. Joy is in here. It's not out there. That my experience of life has much more to do with what I'm bringing to it, not objectively out there. It's an interdependent relationship. And if I work on this, everything out there changes. As typical human beings, we look out there to try to make this happy. So it's a very different paradigm. Instead of the, what is it that's going to make me happy? The question is much more about how is it that I can transform my experience of what's happening in a way that allows my natural well-being to arise. So if we're going to go down that path, well, we have to start thinking, well, does it warrant time and energy to start looking at my attitudes and the way I perceive the world? Would that be more beneficial than trying to arrange the world to make me happy? Which one makes more sense to you? So a Buddhist is going to say, well, maybe I'll try the inner one. And again, not just because, well, let's take a look. Take any event in your life and see if changing your attitude about it changes your experience of it. Anything, right? So I usually use the car accident thing. Have a car accident, terrible thing, a terrible thing. Car accident, wiped it out, car's totaled. It's a brand new car. Now it's totaled. That could be, I have a car, and most, I have 7 billion human beings in the world that don't have, how many don't have cars? How many don't have access to even the opportunity to get in a car? I've lived in India, and, some of them just have a bike that doesn't even fit them. It's pretty exciting. I have a car, I have insurance. What about the perspective of I didn't get hurt? That's a different perspective. When we step out of an environment, whether it's a car accident or something that didn't go our way, we typically get really caught up in it. What an awful thing. I had a terrible day. But if we step back from that day and look at it in a bigger perspective, that we can read and write, we have drinking water, we have electricity, we have resources, we actually have clothes to wear, and we could think about what to do on a Wednesday night. Most of the 7 billion humans out there don't have those choices. So that kind of alters my perspective of, things not going my way today. Changing our attitude about something, gaining a better perspective, will shift our experience of it. The other day I talked about if someone was about to come in the room and I told you something about them, about how they mistreated me, 5 years ago, as soon as they came in, without you even knowing that person, just with that experience, we're going to have a certain feeling about them. But then if I were to tell you, well, that did happen 5 years ago, but 3 years ago they really helped me out when I was down and I had a broken leg and they came and they fed me, then you'd have a different experience of that person when they come in the room. What we wouldn't have is our own experience of that person. There's always going to be a bias. And that's the thing to understand, is that we carry a bias in how we experience the world that we live in. And so we have a bias based on how we're raised, the culture we're raised in, the views that we've experienced, and we only see the world through that lens. And we can't see it any other way. There's no other way to see it. Right? So it feels like we're the center of the universe. And it feels that way because the only way we can experience the world is as the center of the universe. Right? I can't experience it through you. I can only experience the world through me. So typically when I taught high school, and I've mentioned this frequently, it's just so clear. I would have my students, I taught inner city high school, and I would just say, okay, let's just take a look at let's just talk. Kids like that. Let's not work, let's talk. Okay, cool, they're all in. And I'd say, so what do you think the population of the U.S., let's just guess, what's the population is? How many black people do you think there are? And they'd say 40%. Yeah, it's the same every year. Oh yeah, how many Hispanics? 42%. Okay, what about Asians? They'd say about 9-10%. Now I'm doing the math here, we're at, it's at 92%. I'd say, well, how many white people do you think there are in the United States? And they look around the room, and you know what? They just described the room. That's the world they live in. The classroom was about 40, about 10, and there might be a white kid in there or two. And I would show that to them because to recognize that we only see the world through our experience of the world. And if they were to leave their neighborhood, it would be 73% white at that time. And it was something like 12%, black or something. I mean, it's just completely the opposite. But that's not the world they live in. Likewise, it's not the world we live in. We only experience the world through our lens of experience. So it's important to remember we have a bias. And then to start noticing that that bias has a big impact over whether I think something is fun, interesting, terrible, awful, this or that. And I stick a label on it, and based on that label, I think it's real. That person's really a jerk. That person is really a wonderful person. When in fact, the jerk does some nice things, and the person we really like does some jerky things. And if I'd known them my whole life, they're just an old dear friend, and they do stupid stuff sometimes. But if you knew Jimmy like I knew Jimmy, you'd be all right. So, if we start to understand that the mind that we utilize is limited, it's conditioned, and because of its conditioning, it leads me to a very limited experience of life. And I have habits and tendencies. We talked about last time. Karma is really about establishing these sort of impulses, habits, tendencies, and things that since I was even very young, I just reinforce. And I reinforce beliefs, and I reinforce ideas. Imagine how many commercials we've watched in our life when we were young and how that shaped our view. I mean, if you ever really just want to see how bizarre it is, I mean, we don't have a TV, but it's funny. I almost watch more commercials now without a TV, because when I'm trying to watch something on the computer, you kind of have to watch the commercial, right? You're kind of stuck. You can't fast forward. But they will firmly convince you that this perfume will make you smart, attractive, amazing, that if you had this car or this thing, somehow your life will be fulfilled. They'll have this car drive up to the top of a mountain and a kid there, and it's the whole thing, and you just, wow, what is this messaging that we've reinforced in our life, which really promotes the idea that I'll be happy if. When in fact, it's not, what's the old, my friend likes to say, you can starve to death reading a cookbook. You can starve to death reading a cookbook. And we can decorate our life with all this great stuff and wonderful events, but unless we're doing the actual substance, we're not going to find any lasting happiness. We're going to be caught up with dissatisfaction and difficulties. And so we kind of go in this world, and we have this misperception of how it is. 3 marks of existence. Things are impermanent, right? Everything's impermanent. For some reason, I don't think they should change, right? I was talking to somebody the other day in an interview, and and sure enough, he said it. It was great. And Carbondale is not like it used to be. No, it's probably changed. Every town changes, everyone changes, everything changes all the time. But we don't want it to change. So we create a lot of mental suffering around the idea of trying to make things permanent that aren't permanent. Things change, everything changes, I change. But my mind doesn't always catch up to that change, and it struggles to adapt to the new moments and the new opportunities. And even the people I relate to, that person that did me wrong 5 years ago, they've never changed. They're a jerk, and every time I think of them, they're a jerk, and I'm angry and I don't like them. And that was 5 years ago, and I'm upset today. I'm sure they've done some other things since then. The really potent one is what we call unsatisfactoriness. There's nothing in this world that exists outside of ourselves that can provide us with a lasting happiness. There's just nothing. Right now, I have a homemade from this incredible chef, chocolate chip cookie in a Tupperware at home. This guy knows how to cook. I had a taste of one last night. Delicious. And Laura and I both had half. I'm wondering if it'll still be there when I get home. But even the thought of somebody saying, hey, you know what? I have this incredible cookie. This guy baked it for me. He's a chef. It's incredible. Well, a moment ago, I could have been satisfied and content. Now thinking about a cookie, I'm suddenly discontent. I don't have a cookie. Or if you got the cookie and you're telling me, well, I want a cookie. Now there's a thing about that. And then once the cookie's gone, then what happens? What if I go home and my stepson ate that darn cookie? It'll be tragic. Suffering. Subtle things like that we don't pay that much attention to, because then we just think about the next cookie or the next thing. And then there's this ongoing quest for satisfaction. What happens when we actually get satisfied? What happens when you get satisfied? How long does it last?
Not long, then you become dissatisfied because you don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
And you're on to the next thing that you think will make you satisfied.
Yeah. Or you feel satisfied, and then you worry it won't last.
Yeah.
Right? Now I want to maintain
Want
this.
this forever.
Yeah. And now I'm worried. You know. Satisfaction. When I was a monk, we were traveling, and so a group of monks were in a van, and this guy had a brand new car, a really nice car. Forget what it was. It was sort of Land Rover-ish or something. And a lady bumped into him in the back. Bumped his car. I mean, he really didn't do any damage, but man, this guy was out of the car, freaking out, yelling at this woman. I mean, we had to go kind of intervene because he was so upset, and we're looking. And it occurred to me, how much happiness is that car giving you right now? And then how much drama with that poor lady, you know, who bumped its car. And we think about this in our life. When we look at all of our sufferings, how much is based upon the idea of this thing was going to make me happy? And then the thing that was going to make me happy, or the person that's going to make me happy, where does all of our worry, stress, fears, and anxieties reside? Around the things that are going to make us happy, right? Provide us security. So this unsatisfactoriness, it's just pervasive. It's the nature of samsara. It's the nature of the conditioned existence we live in, unsatisfactoriness. And then the third mark of existence is this misperception of self, this idea of John, you know, the idea that I grab onto. I'm John, and I'm the same John that was here yesterday, and I'm the same John that was 10 years ago, and I'm this kind of personality, and I'm, you know, this kind of person, and I carry that day to day. And it's very firm, and it's very independent and separate from you. And I have this objective idea of John, and you're different, and everything else. And when we look a little closer, we start to realize that John's changing moment to moment too, and John is a label, and my personality changes over time. My qualities change over time. My body changes over time. That John has different labels based on who he's talking to, right? So right now, Dharma teacher, you know, with my grandkids, I'm a grandparent with, you know, as I talk to somebody, I arise independence upon that situation, and I get new labels. And it's always interdependent. Everything that's John could not exist without food, air, water, others, language. Everything I have is all independence upon everything else. There's not an independent John. I can't self-exist. And so there's this kind of me and you, me and mine, you and yours. When in fact, you know, just the roads we drove on, who built those roads, the car that we drive, who built the cars, you know, on and on. The food we eat, where'd that come from, the clothes I'm wearing. There's a very interdependent process that's going on. That's just the way the world is. But our minds don't see this, right? Our mind tries to make things permanent that aren't permanent, tries to find satisfaction in things that can't give it, and really attaches an independence to John that doesn't exist. And out of that, we create a lot of problems. So that's kind of where we're at. And we think, well, is there a way to change this inertia, this force of a mind dragging me into these delusional states of trying to make a world where, you know, if I just eat right and exercise, I'll live long. And if I, you know, really tend to my emotions and feelings, you know, I'll have good relationships. And that my friends will be around and I'll have good friendships. And that I won't get cancer and all that. When in fact, in the world, right, people get cancer, people exercise, get cancer, people eat right, can die tomorrow. There's a reason we have therapists and hospitals and first responders and cars breaking out, auto mechanics. That's the world we live in. But for some reason, when it happens to me, it's different, isn't it? I mean, I understand it when you have, you know, problems, but not me. I think it should be different. So we have this sort of mind that says I should be different, and if I can just arrange things right, I'm going to have this life, I'm going to live X amount of years, and I should be free of having my luggage misplaced on an airplane. It's a fascinating mind. So what is it we can rely upon? That's the deal. And what we come into is the Buddhist path says, well, why not rely upon Dharma? Okay? Dharma is essentially truth, the nature of how things are. Dharma liberates, you know, the practice of Buddhism, the path of a Buddhist is to be liberated from all mental afflictions, from all delusion, from being totally free of karma and these impulses that drive us away from knowing who we actually are and how the world actually is. And so, if we're going to develop this faith in a Dharma, in a path, well, number one is, what would be more reliable than truth? That one's you know, I'm a practical person. I'm kind of a skeptic. So I think, okay, well, I think I can rely on truth. And so is there, within a Buddhist path, there's only one point. The point is to know the truth. That's the whole point. There's no other goal in Buddhism than to actually know the truth. And quite literally, the truth will set you free. So with Buddhism, all of the tools of Buddhism, the Dharma, the path, which is the Dharma. So Dharma is often used as the teachings that show you the truth, the teachings that give you the practices and so forth that lead to seeing the truth. It's also the realizations that you get on the path is the Dharma. But the ultimate Dharma jewel is the nature of reality itself. It's truth. And so I think, well, okay, I can rely upon that. I can devote myself to a path that's only focused on truth. I can get there because that, to me, liberates me from a lot of dogma, a lot of things that can get in the way. So, okay, I can dedicate myself to truth. That's why one of the things that's really wonderful about Buddhism is, you know, science. Yeah, let's bring it in. You know, let's hook up monks. Let's see what you find. Let's look at the mind. Let's see what's going on. Yeah, let's test it. Let's find out what's true. It's not true because it's written here. It's true first-person experience. There's things that are beyond comprehension from our mind, but they are knowable, and they're knowable by doing. And so I like to start with, okay, if I'm going to develop some refuge, something that I can depend on that's true, what is it as an entry point? What's a little crack of the door that starts? Because you don't go all in. You take some rungs on the ladder. And if the rungs on the ladder start getting you somewhere, you can have faith that there's another one. Okay? So for me personally, what I needed is some personal experiences as what is I can rely upon. What I found to be true that I can rely upon, and I encourage you to test this out. I do not have control over people, places, things, events, the outer world. I don't have control over whether someone's going to, hit me with a car. But I do have control over one thing, what I do, my actions. I actually have control over that. I don't necessarily always have control over my thoughts. I don't have control over my feelings. I don't have control over these impulses. But I actually can choose to do something or not choose to do. And I can develop that. And so the entry level for me was pretty simply this. When I do things that I feel good about, that ethically I feel good about, my values, when I show up in a way that has integrity and honor and do things that I feel are beneficial, I feel good. And that joy is a reservoir within myself. That's where I find my worthiness, my value. And when I have worthiness and value, I'm more naturally humble because I don't need to prove anything to anybody. I'm more able to be authentic, and I'm more able to be helpful. So what I can rely upon is that when I do things I feel good about, I feel good. When I do things I don't feel good about, I don't feel very good. And we're just going to a very basic, fundamental truth. If I want to have integrity and honor, a sense of worthiness, of value, of wholeness, if I want to overcome insecurity, fear, resentments, and so forth, that doesn't happen by getting a lot of cool stuff. It does come from being the person I want to be, from living in a way that is in alignment with my values. So I could test that. And so that's what I did almost 32 years ago. Started to focus on doing things I feel good about instead of doing things that make me feel good. Doing things I feel good about, not just things that make me feel good. And we focus a lot on doing things that make me feel good. When I do things I feel good about, they don't always feel good at that time, right? When we show up to our grandmother's house and we have to help and we don't really want to, but it's the right thing to do, well, I feel good about that. And I wouldn't feel very good about blowing her off. Even though I might go swimming, it might be funner temporarily. So this is where that ethics and values and how I engage in the world. And so here's where we start, is we start with taking a refuge in reality. And reality is just an honest truth that outer circumstances, people, events, and things can only provide me a temporary pleasure. And a lot of that has to do with my attitude. It doesn't mean that having nice things aren't fine. No, it's just understanding they're limited. It's just understanding they're limited. So, starting with the refuge is I want to rely upon that driving my primary motivation to have as much pleasurable experiences as possible in life is not going to find me any inner peace and well-being. Being the person that I value will. Now that's just universal, and you'll find that, back in all the classical Greek philosophers. You'll find it in the ancient wisdom tradition. You'll find it everywhere. You'll find it from your grandmother, probably. So this is how we enter a door. We enter a door saying, okay, what's really going to find inner peace and well-being is ethical behavior that I feel good about. And I'm going to notice something about all the outer things. I'm going to start noticing that they come and go. I'm going to start noticing that the thing that gave me so much pleasure 2 years ago doesn't give me that much pleasure today. I'm going to find that the feelings that I have today won't last. I'm going to find that whether I'm really happy in this moment, that'll come and go. Whether I'm really sad, it will come and go. So I want to start noticing what is consistent. What's consistent is that feelings, thoughts, and emotions are temporary. And they're not who I am. They're things I experience. They're things I experience. So when we talk about taking refuge, we can start taking refuge in what we can rely upon, the truth. And the truth of Dharma is starting to recognize that the path of Dharma, ethics, concentration, and wisdom. Ethics, concentration, and wisdom. Is it worthy? Is it worth the effort? Is it something that sounds dependable, something worth trying, that if I live more ethically, my life will improve? If I learn to develop concentration, attention, and keep my mind from going off on tangents, if I develop the ability to cultivate a mind that's attentive and what we call mental stability, balance, focus, will that help me improve? Instead of being caught up in thoughts, worries, and fears all the time. I'd say, yeah, probably. If I'm more concentrated and attentive, will I be more ethical? Probably. Because now I'm there to make a choice instead of just being caught up on impulses and desires. And then, with a little more attentive mind, focusing and doing things that I feel good about with a little bit more value and worthiness and how I engage with others, what if I brought some wisdom into that and started to remember that all these thoughts, feelings, and emotions are temporary? What will last is how I engage in life. And how I experience the world is a subjective experience. Would that help me make better choices? Would it eliminate a lot of difficulties? Now, I would propose that that would all make a lot of sense. And so this is the three higher trainings of Buddhism. The path of Dharma, ethics, concentration, and wisdom. It starts with wisdom, really. Ethics is the foundation, and concentration becomes this trunk of our stability. But with wisdom is where I have to remember that the world I live in is a subjective experience, and what I do and how I live my life is what's ultimately important. At the end of our life, what's going to matter? What's going to matter is how we lived our life. If I want to feel good about myself, that's how I live my life. What I do matters. The attitudes I bring into events and situations matter. The seeds I water grow. If I water resentment, anger, and frustration, they'll grow. Those are mental states. If I water wisdom, interdependence, compassion, recognition that we're all interdependent and living with each other, and that you're all valuable and doing the best you can, I'm going to treat you differently. I'm going to water different seeds. So wisdom is recognizing that how I feel about you has a lot to do with me. Right? Whether I slept last night, whether I'm hungry, whether I'm irritable, whether I feel good, whether I just got some good news, you could be totally wonderful. Or you could be a pain in the neck. And I actually think you're the pain in the neck, instead of understanding that I'm experiencing pain because I would like, or I didn't sleep, or I would like you to be different, or whatever. So, if we were to establish some faith in refuge, this would have to make some sense to you. If it makes sense to you, it's logical, it's something that's testable. Can you go out tomorrow and notice how your attitudes affect how you experience everybody? If you maintained an attitude, one of my favorite practices is to try to, everyone I meet, the Dalai Lama, it's his advice, His Holiness, to everyone you meet, treat them as an old dear friend. And watch how that shifts your interactions with people. Probably be different. Notice that how you experience people differently based on what you're bringing to it. So you go, oh, well, is this better? And if I ruminate on anger and resentment, does that grow? Does that lessen resentments? How's that work? If I step back and gain a bigger perspective, will that anger go away? So these are things that are knowable, experiencing directly. And so when we take refuge, what we're taking refuge in, of the three jewels, we've got the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. The highest jewel is the Dharma. It's the truth. The Buddha, when we say taking refuge in the three jewels, the Buddha is not just that we're taking refuge in an historical teacher that gave these teachings of the path. It's hard to know that person, right? And it's hard to know, what's true and which canon and all that. What we're really taking refuge in is that there are these qualities of Buddha that we have within ourselves that we can obtain. And we can take some refuge in that if there is a belief that such qualities have existed in beings. So, there's some 2,000, it's getting on 2,600 here. It's getting more, right? It used to always be 2,500, but it's moving on. So over time, there's been these teachings, and is there an example of others who have practiced this path, who have eliminated mental and emotional sufferings and obtained enlightenment? And are there examples that we can go to that have worked this path, that have achieved these qualities? So for me, that's what I want to look at. I'm a skeptic. I remember when I was at the monastery, first time I was in a monastery in India. I was just this little doughy-eyed monk, just here with all these monks, and there's 1,300 of them, and we're this incredible. I was staying at this great Lama's house, and just, I was just star-eyed, and this incredible monk, real bodhisattva, just compassionate, loving, kind. He told me a story. He goes about the passing of a lama and what happens when a lama passes. So there's all the teachings on that and what they practice. Their body dies, they stay in a state of meditation. The body doesn't decompose, so even though the body's dead, there's meditation that goes on. Lives, for stays in a meditative state for a number of days. And he told me a story of, he said, well, I'm skeptical. I want to know. So he wanted to know. So he volunteered to, the next time a lama died, to be on that service and to do the prayers and be around the body and be part of the burial and all that. And so he told me this fascinating story about the lama dying, about him checking it out, about him tending to it, the days of meditation that stayed after the body didn't decompose, the way they do the rituals and the cremation. There's a Sam mandala underneath and a little baby footprint that appears, and the size of the footprint is when they'll be reincarnated, and just all these incredible signs. I don't have time to go through all that, but he told me the story, and he said, I saw it. That's what made me believe it. And I thought, whoa, and I wrote it all down. But that didn't make it happen, though he would no reason to impress me. But I kept the story. And who knew that years later my Lama would die? Venerable Geshe Geltsen up there on your right. And I was there. And I was with him through 3 days of meditation after his body died. And I got to accompany his holy body back to India 2 weeks later. No decomposing. Got to help tend to the fire and do the ritual offerings. Got to be there when they uncover the mandala and see, all the miraculous things. And I got to say, who knew? I mean, I had no idea I would ever get that chance. Little white kid from Pasadena, California, in India, with an incredible Lama like that. How'd that happen? So, that type of inquisitiveness, of discernment, I think is important when we want to develop faith. It's not done because of interesting conversations or because things make sense. We do it, we check it out. And so if we're going to take refuge, are there these beings that have achieved a greater degree of inner peace and well-being and less mental afflictions than me? And if so, who are they, and can I identify them? Can I get to know them? Right. So I've had the good fortune of like meeting His Holiness and many other lamas who have had these levels. So I thought it's worthy, it's doable, and there's records of these people. As a matter of fact, there's a book, a Christian Catholic priest has written a book on rainbow body, on the phenomena of that, and he went through different traditions. He wrote a book, and I can't nail his name, so I'll look it up. These things are important to check out and say, okay, so for me, I've experienced these people and teachers that have subdued their mental afflictions. I think, okay, well, I can try that then. And then, are there some things that, when we're taking refuge in the Buddha, we're taking refuge in, I can develop these qualities in myself. We're building a bridge between myself in a limited state and an enlightened being who is totally unconditioned. That's what we're doing. We're taking refuge that there are these beings that exist, the Buddha that gave these teachings, and these qualities, but it's really these qualities can and actually do reside in me already. We're just obscured. So I take refuge in the Buddhas, in all the Buddhas, in these qualities of enlightenment, in the Dharma, and then the Sangha is the third jewel. And the third jewel, the Sangha, checking timer, the Sangha jewel, when it's used in this reference, it doesn't refer to, like, we call ourselves a Sangha. It refers to enlightened beings, the whole genre of all the enlightened beings. They're the Sangha. They're beyond a conditioned existence. We can rely upon them, and that they transcend time and space to keep these teachings that keep a link for people to be free of suffering. On a conventional level, they use Sangha as ordained monks and nuns. That'd be the Sangha. They're ordained. And then more, today, we often will say the Sangha of our community. And so the Sangha of our community, we know, are still not always very dependable. Right? We still may have a few mental afflictions. We might have some problems once in a while. But the spiritual community that we use gives us and sustains us an oasis from which we can develop these qualities. Because when we're not here talking about this, what are we doing? When we're not around other people cultivating their highest potentials, who are we around? And what are we doing? Where can we go where there's like-minded people that are recognizing their true nature and helping you to recognize yours? Where is there an oasis that we could sustain a more accurate view of reality? Because when we walk out the door, delusion comes strong, and attachments and aversions and clinging and all that. So here, and even on a very conventional level with the way we use Sangha today, incredibly important for us to sustain growth, and that's why having a Dharma center and community is so important. So taking refuge then is the idea of a place that we can rely upon, a path, a safe direction that we can head, that we can really lean into. And so my encouragement today is to, test the path a little bit. Is all of the mental and emotional suffering I'm having in my life, is that my mind or is it out there somewhere? If I is it potential that I could actually see more accurately and make decisions that stop creating more agitation in my life? Is that possible? Is it worth trying out? And if so, try it out. And if it makes sense, then we start taking a refuge. Then when we say, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, well, there's a path that I can act. I believe I can be enlightened, that I have these qualities, that I can be free of suffering. In the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha, the three jewels that lead to a recognition of the nature of reality itself. Then we can lean into that a little bit. And that's what sustains us when things are difficult. When things are difficult, when you have the Dharma, you realize that the difficulty will come and go. And I'll still be here. With the Dharma, we recognize that mental and emotional states come and go. This body comes and goes. But the seeds we plant don't fade away. That we can grow and nurture those, even in different lifetimes. And that we have all the qualities we need to be enlightened right now. So I'm just going to pause there and see if anyone had a question or a comment. Keep trying to end 5 minutes early. I keep going 5 minutes over. Yeah.
It seems simpler or easier to, than what I'm hearing, to go out and see people around here or other people in here. And I don't know if I'm doing this right, but and work with that. But I'm also seeing things in this world that leave me feeling very sad and scared and amazed. How do I work with that?
Yeah, that is actually the force of getting us on the Dharma path, is to recognize that this world we live in is filled with suffering. Its very nature is suffering. So the path of enlightenment is to be liberated from suffering. That at the root of the problems in this world is misperception, greed, attachment, aversion, that this mental confusion creates all this drama, this pain, this hardship, this violence. It also creates a lot of kindness and joy and so forth too, but all of it's completely limited. And so with Buddhism, the goal is to recognize that the very nature of conditioned existence, its very nature, is dukkha. It's unsatisfactory. Its very nature is that. You're not going to make the world free of suffering. You become free of suffering.
I sort of feel like I'm watching things and I'm missing them. I don't mean literally missing them, but I'm not aware enough. I'm not seeing what's happening, and things are happening, and I need to be more aware. And I can't explain. Anyway, it's bigger than what I can.
Yeah. Yeah, our encouragement is to look in here, and for me it's kind of an interesting path when you think about when I get, because I was raised political science major, history teacher. I keep abreast of what's going on in the world fairly well. I think it's important for what I do. But I'll tell you what, when I can go take 6 months off and come back, and really the world's not a whole lot different. And it's pretty fascinating. We get caught up in the little micro things, but in the bigger picture, it's not a lot different. Technology's changing, climate's changing, things are happening. But in terms of day-to-day life, when you come back, you're still going to find some very fundamentally basic things that are still happening. Same patterns and things. Yeah. I often think about, the idea that this one event will change everything. And we believe that to be true. And it's never the one event, though, is it? It's all the events that led to the one event, right? It's, the analogy of the game-winning run. That game-winning run only depends on the other runs. The final point in a basketball game only matters in relation to all the other points. The world we live in is an evolving process, and which also empowers us to do one thing that I find very hopeful, personally. When I feel like I cannot improve the world, I realize I can always improve myself, and in doing so, the world just got better. And that we do have power over. And it's not a small feat. And the ripples that take place when we develop ourselves. And with a Buddhist point of view is that if we can really work to cultivate our highest potentials and achieve enlightenment, we can really be of benefit. You know, the long game is what we're talking about, to really rid people of suffering. And if we look at the world we live in, we'll notice that there's a pendulum, pendulum. When things get really difficult, and you know, then this amazing good can come from that. When things get really good, the world gets complacent, and we let up, and then all the old stuff comes back in. So you'll notice in cycles of the U.S. and so forth, that's kind of a historical pattern. Yeah. Yeah, but ultimately, what we do and how we engage in life is really going to matter. John Francis, you know, with his teachings on environment and climate, you know, his big revelation that brought him out of all those years of silence was that we are the environment. How we treat each other is the environment. And if we want to change something environmentally, we need to change how we treat each other. And it starts here, not there. You know, we don't want to be the person on the corner protesting against anger and hatred while we're hitting somebody with a stick. You know, I don't want to be that guy. I want to be the guy on the corner saying love and peace, and with love and peace, while somebody has their anger. And so, yeah, we can do this. I find it very hopeful, actually. If you step back again and look at the world we live in, when on this planet has there ever been so much tolerance, so much humanity, so much compassion, so much kindness, and actually so little killing? And you look back at the sheer numbers, it's never happened. You know, and the thought that we could have a black president who's raised by a, you know, single working mom, and that gay people can get married, and interracial dating now, that's just common. In this country, it used to be illegal. You know, when we really step back, an incredible amount of humanity. I mean, here we are talking about kindness and compassion, doing a Buddhist thing in Carbondale, Colorado, in a mountain town. I remember being it was probably 35 years ago, standing on a corner in Grand Junction in jeans with short hair, white guy selling flowers and getting spit on, and called some sort of hippie, what did they think I was, a Hare Krishna? And I was wearing jeans right there, just selling flowers, because it was an unusual sight in Grand Junction back then. And then I remember going back to Grand Junction in Buddhist robes, you know, quite literally wearing a dress with a bald head, and with a whole bunch of other Tibetan monks, and having women blow kisses at us, and people inviting us to the thing, and us, you know, getting the keys to the city and things. World's actually, there's a lot of good stuff going on. Yeah. What we pay attention to becomes our reality, and when I focus on this, it blocks out all this. Yeah. Which doesn't mean there isn't difficulty. Perspective. All right. So we'll do a little dedication. Announcements. Normally it's Aaron. He's not here today, so I'm our announcer. Two big events. One is book release on Monday. So there's these little flyers. Apparently John Bruna wrote a book, and the launch party is on Monday, 6:30 in the Callaway Room. And so there'll be a talk, signings of the book. The books, if those of you who have already bought them, will get them that day. You can order them online. It will be webcast, so you online, by the way, that's a camera I keep pointing to up there. Those of you online, I'm not just talking to the air. Online, it will be webcast, so that's Monday, 6:30. Information is on ameaningfullife.us. And anyone who'd like to volunteer to help, because we could use some help passing out books and behind the table and setting up chairs. You can see Shannon right there, who's right there. And because, yeah, we could use some volunteers for that. And then on the 30th, we're going to have Venerable Tenzin Priyadarshi come and give a day-long teaching, an incredible Lama that we get to host for our second time. So I encourage you not to miss that opportunity. Information's on Way of Compassion Dharma Center website, and you can register. It'd help if you registered so we kind of know how many people. We're going to have a potluck and all that, and it'll be a day-long teaching. Other than that, we do our regular Saturday events here. We have Saturday morning Chenrei Sig practice and a book study after that. So details on that on the website. So that's pretty good. Okay, and let's do our dedication. Let us dedicate the merit and wisdom we have accumulated, both here today and throughout our lives, both individually and collectively. Let us dedicate it for the benefit of all beings. May all beings be free of suffering and find lasting happiness. And may we be able to use the merit and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lives to purify our own minds, to cultivate our own highest potentials and qualities, to become fully enlightened for the benefit of all beings. All right, well, thank you all so much. Always a joy and honor. And be well, try to stay out of trouble, and have some fun, too. And thanks for joining us online.